Here we're doing a dimensional analysis problem where we're going to convert 250 kilometers to yards, and we're going to do that using this unit conversion right here. This is a problem that because we are going to be converting to the English system, we are going to need to use our calculators for. So there's going to come a time in the video where I'm going to pause and do the calculations. Also, this is the basic unit conversion that I use between inches and centimeters between English and metric. And I don't typically use the one for kilometers and miles because I never really took the time to memorize it. The cool thing about this problem though is it does require us to use this chart. This is very similar to the chart on the back of your periodic table, except it doesn't have as much. But it's set up in exactly the same way. So forgive me if you've already seen some of my other videos, but if this is the first of the videos you're watching from me, then I definitely want to go over how to read this chart. And I'm going to go over it the same way in the other videos too. But I just want to make sure that you guys have a good understanding. So anytime we're using these prefixes in this chart, that's going to represent the value of 1. All of these numbers we're going to use to represent our base values, which is going to be grams, meters, or liters. So essentially what this chart is telling us that one of these is equal to this many of our base unit every time. So let's look at kilometers for a moment. So we have kilometers here, K, 10 to the third power. So 10 to the third power represents, if we're looking at kilometers or kilometers as people say, we're looking at how many meters is in 1 kilometer. So there's 10 to the 3 or 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. And that's how it works for all of these. So a lot of you guys know centimeters as well. You have 10 to the negative 2, that's 0.01 0.01 meters in 1 centimeter. So one of these is always going to equal to this number of our base value. And I could explain it, and you can rewind and fast forward and watch me explain it 100 times, but unless you see it in the process of dimensional analysis, it's kind of difficult and a little bit tricky. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we get started, though, I do want to point out that in this value, we have 2 sig figs. So looking at this right here, and I believe I do have some problems on sig figs in other videos, but just to show you real quick, the decimal is absent, and we learned the Atlantic Pacific method. So if the decimal is absent, we start on the Atlantic side, that's the east side. We're assuming the number is America, and it's our goal to travel to America. We go from the Atlantic side towards the number, and we start counting at the first non-zero number, which is 5. And then we count all the way to the other end. So 1, 2. There are 2 sig figs. This 0 is not very significant. It's possibly a rounded number only because that 0 value doesn't really matter so much. It's about 250 kilometers. We don't need to get into any more detail according to this value. So our final answer is going to have 2 sig figs, and that's important to keep in mind as well. All right, so I'm going to 250 kilometers. That's going to be over 1. I like to put it over 1. It's not necessary to put it over 1. You can if you want to. We did do a problem where we actually had a unit in our denominator, but that's only because we had miles per hour. Here we just have 1 unit, kilometers. So we're not doing distance and time, it's just distance. So I like to put a 1 there as a placeholder, but that doesn't mean I need it there. I also like to set up the whole problem first and then figure out what numbers need to go in. Some people like to set it all up at once and put all the numbers in as you go, and that's fine too. However you want to do it is fine. So I need to go from kilometers to yards. I have kilometers on top of my first fraction, so I'm going to put kilometers in the bottom of my second fraction. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to treat this unit like a variable. Whatever is on top must be on the bottom of the next fraction. I need to go kilometers to yards, and it's giving me centimeters here in this unit conversion. And to be honest with you, I don't know how many centimeters are in 1 kilometer off the top of my head, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to practice using this chart. I'm going to go from kilometers to meters, meters to centimeters, and then I can go centimeters to inches, and for that I gotta change my color. It only lets me do 5 colors at a time. So inches. Now I'm running out of room here. I want to see if I would be able to move all this. Yes, I can move all this down and have some more room to write. That's very good. So from here, inches, I actually need to make more space. I'm doing more conversions. This is a long problem. I'm going to put 2 more down here. I'm going to go from inches, and the final answer is asking me for yards. I know there are 36 inches in 1 yard, and I know that because there's 3 feet in a yard. So it's one of those things that I just naturally memorized over the years. So here's what you could do if you wanted to. You can go inches to feet and feet to yards. But for the sake of time and for the sake of saving room, because I don't want too much going on down here, I'm going to go straight from inches to yards. I personally find that easier. You don't have to do that. If you want to go the longer route, you absolutely could. And since I finally have yards, I can erase this, this last fraction bar right here. All right. So here's what I got. My yards is going to end up being orange, and I did not intend for that orange and blue combination. So to all my Seminole fans out there, I am so deeply sorry. That is just how it worked out this way. So I have everything set up just as I need it. Now I got to plug in my numbers, my values. So I'm going to use my chart for my metric portion. Looking at this chart here, here's what I do know and here's what I do remember. I'm putting a value of 1 every time I see that prefix. So I know when I see the prefixes, this chart is going to tell me my base units for 1 kilometer and for 1 centimeter. So for these meters right here in green, that's what I'm going to insert the numbers from this chart. So according to this chart, if I look under kilometers, that's 10 to the 3rd meters equals 1 kilometer. So that's what I'm going to put down, is 10 to the 3rd. Then going over to the chart, centimeters, that's all in 1 fraction. I go to centi, and 10 to the negative 2 meters is what equals 1 centimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and put 10 to the negative 2. I know that's a little bit sloppy. Let's see if I can fix that a bit. There we go. So from here, I actually don't need my chart anymore because the rest we're using the English units. So those are just something that I either need to know or will be provided to me. And most of everything we do will be provided to you. So it's given to me up here, and I'll go ahead and underline this in the corresponding colors, that 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch. So I'm going to write for this fraction 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch. And I told you before, I just happen to have memorized there's 36 inches in 1 yard. So with that being said, I have all these beautiful colors. I'm color coordinated here. I've got everything. But if you take a look as we go through, every unit has a match. They all have a matching color except for this orange. That means my final answer is going to be in yards, which is why I'm stopping here. I cannot do anything else. I can't add any more fractions, no other conversions, because the final answer should be in yards. And once yards is on the top of my last fraction, that's when I need to stop. So I can now cancel out all my units. Kilometers are gone. Meters are gone. Centimeters are gone. Inches are gone. And here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to need to take out my calculator. I'm going to need to pause the video. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show my work. I'm going to multiply all of the numbers in the top except for my 10 to the third, because I like to do those by hand just in case I don't come prepared with the right calculator. Then I'm going to multiply all of the numbers on the bottom, doing the same thing with the 10 to the second on the bottom. And then I'm going to write those numbers out and show you how to divide, and we'll get our final answer. I'm going to pause the video real quick and write out what I get as my answer when I plug it into the calculator. Alright, so when I did my calculations, I was looking at the top in a little more detail, and the beauty of it was we had 1 times 1 times 1, and then 250 in our 10 to the third, so I really didn't have to do any calculations for that. I did have to do some calculations for the denominator. I left that 10 to the negative 2 there, but all I did to get that 91.44 was I multiplied our 2.54 times 36 to get that value. I'll need to pause again for this next part in the video, but just to show you what we're going to do next. I'm going to divide in my calculator the 250 and the 91.44. I'm going to do that in just a moment, but first I want to go ahead and get my exponent ready. So this is where I get the most missed right here is we have 10 to the third power, 10 to the negative 2 power. When we divide, we subtract our exponents. So it's going to be 3 minus negative 2. We're subtracting that negative, so that's going to give us an exponent of 5. So I don't know how that happened. The background just changed real quick to different types of lines. I think that's pretty cool, and I wish I could figure out how I did that, but I'm just going to leave it alone because it doesn't affect the problem at all. When I divided these two numbers, I got 2.734. I ended up rounding it. I put it out to 4 decimal places just because I wanted to show you how to put it in proper sig figs and just to give you an idea of how that works. We need 2 sig figs in our final answer, and since our final answer is in yards, I'm going to go ahead and put our final answer in orange. So we need 2 sig figs. I have it rounded to 3 decimal places, but I just need 2 numbers. So it's going to be 2 point something. If this 3 were a bigger number, we would have to round it up to 2.8 in order to get 2 significant figures. But since it's less than 5, I'm going to make it just 2.7. And all we did was round, so we're not changing the exponent at all. And don't forget, we need to have yards in our final answer. And that's it. A third video is coming. If you guys have any more problems you want me to work out and post on Schoology, just let me know.